Good day to you, friends. Seamus here, and we have a lovely story today. And we're going to do something different because this is a somewhat longer story, so we're going to do it in two parts. So just stand by for that. We're going to share the story today of The Clever Wife. And before we get started, I want to say hello to a few friends that have been supportive of our videos so far. I want to say hello to Miss Sue, a clever wife herself, the mother of one of my dear friends, Miss Hannah, down in Windsor Way. And I want to say hello to my young friend Erica, whose grandma Stacy is one of my best supporters. So anyway, let us go ahead today with a wonderful story called The Clever Wife. Once upon a time, in a land of many kings, there was a builder named Miller Smith. Miller Smith's reputation went far and wide. Whether you needed a bridge or a barn, a simple cottage or a fine manor home, everyone knew that Miller Smith was the man to go to. And he did all of his best work with his apprentice, who was his own strong son. And one morning, sitting at breakfast, Mr. Smith realized that his young son wasn't so young anymore. He had grown up to be a strong, good-looking young man. And he got to think that maybe it was the time for his son to make a life for himself. And he decided that morning to set his son a challenge to see how he could make through on his own. So that morning, while the son was clearing away the breakfast dishes, Miller Smith went out to the barn and he got a sheepskin, a fleece, if you will, and he brought it back into the home. And when the son was done his chores, he dropped the sheepskin on his hands. And his son said, "Father, what is this for?" And his father said, "I need a favor to ask of you, lad. I need you to do something for me." And the son said, "Anything, father, just tell me what it is." And Miller Smith said, "I need you to take this sheepskin. I need you to go off into the villages and get the best price you can for this sheepskin. But once you have that best value, I want you to bring it home to me." And the son said, "Father, how can I sell a sheepskin but also bring the sheepskin home? I don't understand." And his father said, "You're a smart young man. You'll figure it out." And he sent the young boy on his way. And down the road he went towards the east into the villages that laid off in that way. And he went from village to village and door to door through every little hamlet, every manor home he could find, knocking on every door. And everyone knew that Miller Smith had a good farm and it was a good quality fleece and they were willing to pay a decent price. But no one was willing to buy a fleece and then not get the fleece. And at the end of the day, just before the sun was beginning to set, the son made his way home quite disappointed that he hadn't done what his father asked him to do. And he told his father, and Miller Smith said, "No worries, lad. There's always tomorrow. You'll figure it out." And they had their supper, did their evening chores, and went to bed. Well, the next morning, of course, the son got up and he hadn't slept very well because he knew what was ahead of him. And he did his morning chores and he had his breakfast with his father. And his father gave him back the fleece and the son just nodded his head and out the door he went and down the road towards the west. And he went through every village that he could find and up and down the trails into every manor house and knocked on every door. And again, everyone knew it was a fine quality fleece worth whatever price. But no one was going to pay for a fleece and then not get to keep it. And at the end of the day, the son arrived back home, saddened again at disappointing his father. He laid the fleece over the rail and went in for his supper, did his evening chores, and went off to bed. Well, friends, you can imagine, on the third morning, the son was quite disheartened. He had barely slept. He was miserable at the table that morning, did his morning chores, took the fleece, and headed off to the north. And he went through every village, every little hamlet, every little farmhouse, manor home, didn't matter. He knocked on every door he could find. And by noontime or so, he was so disheartened that he decided to just go home and admit to his father that he couldn't do what he asked him to do. And along the way, he thought he would take a shortcut. And he went on a trail through the woods, saw a small bridge leading over a wee stream. And going over the stream, he threw the fleece down on the railing and rested his head and gave a great sad sigh. And looking down, he saw a young woman down in the stream barefoot washing out her fleeces and making them nice and clean. And seeing her being so successful, he gave an even greater sigh. And at that point, the young woman looked up and said, "Young man, what is it that troubles you so?" And he told her the whole sad story. And she said, "Well, you're just a silly young fella, aren't you? Bring that fleece down to me." Well, he didn't know what she meant, but down from the bridge he went and down the bank of the stream and into the water with her, and he handed her the fleece. And she took the fleece and laid it down, skin side down into the water, so the water of the stream could run through the wool, and she squished it and squeezed it until all the dirt ran out of it and it was nice and clean. Then she took it up out of the water, took her shears, cut away all the wool, and laid it out in the sun to dry, handed him the skin back along with 5 coins. And he said, "What are you doing?" And she says, "I'm paying you for the fleece. That's the value of this after all. So there, you can take the value of it home to your father and the skin as well. Now I have work to do. A good day." Well, the son was so elated, he left. He almost skipped his way home, got home and told his father what had happened, and his father was quite pleased. But then Miller Smith asked, "Who was this young woman?" I don't know. Well, what was her name? I don't know. Well, where is she from? I don't know. And the father said, she did for you what you couldn't do for yourself, and you didn't even ask her name. Tomorrow, lad, you go out and find this young woman. Find out who she is and where she's from, and we're going to invite her home for supper. So sure enough, the next day the boy went out, headed up north, looked for the trailhead where he had come out onto the road, followed that trail back up, found the little bridge, found the wee stream, and sure enough, there she was again, washing out more of her fleeces. And he told her what had happened when he got home the night before and asked if she would like to come for supper. And she says, not today, I have chores to do, but I'll come by tomorrow. And when he went to tell her where he lived, she said, sure, everybody knows Miller Smith and his strong son. I'll see you tomorrow afternoon for supper. And off he went. Well, sure enough, the next day she showed up just in time for the afternoon meal, and they sat down and broke bread together. And Miller Smith watched as his young son and the young lady had wonderful conversation together. And sure, she was as wise as she was lovely, and as lovely as she was wise. And by the end of the meal, when she was getting ready to leave, Miller Smith said, you're a smart young lass. I wonder if you would consider marrying my son. And she said, I think that's a lovely idea. I'll have to bring back my mither and my da, and we'll have a chat. The next day, sure enough, she came back with her mother and her father. They met with Miller Smith and his strong son. They came to an agreement. The announcements were made, and a fortnight later, the families gathered together for a wonderful wedding feast. And Miller Smith's young son was married to the delightful young girl of the sheep farmer. They came together as man and wife. And the next morning, they woke up, sat down at the breakfast table in the rising sun, and enjoyed their first meal together as husband and wife. And friends, you would think that that's where the story would end. And it would certainly be a good place, but that's not all. There is more to this story, and I hope you join us again soon when we share the rest of the story of the clever wife. Until then, take good care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.